All right, what is up, folks? Welcome back to another episode of the Help Me Understand podcast. I'm your host, JK, and before getting into episode number 172, where I share both my perspective and a perspective that was recently shared with me on whether or not you really need to enjoy exercise. That's the working title right now. The question, do you really have to enjoy exercise to stay consistent with it? Before getting into today's episode, two orders of business. The first is I want to say thank you for choosing to press play on the Help Me Understand podcast, whether you are listening on one of the various podcasting platforms or as of right now, if I do this the way I'm supposed to, if you're watching it on YouTube, hint, hint, thank you for choosing to press play on Help Me Understand. You certainly have no shortage of content and podcasts and all sorts of other things that you can spend your time consuming. So I truly, truly never take it for granted that you chose to press play on Help Me Understand. Also, second order of business, Help Me Understand is sponsored by a company that I co-own called Feed Your Habits. Feed Your Habits is an apparel company where we primarily focus on t-shirts. We've also branched out into sweatshirts. I'm actually wearing one of our designs right now. So if you're on YouTube, you'll be able to see this recent release that we've got with the crew neck. We also carry hoodies and then also a style of joggers. So feedyourhabits.com is where you can hop on to grab apparel for those that truly believe that habits don't just happen, they're built through strategic, consistent, intentional action. So hop on to feedyourhabits.com. At checkout, just enter my code JKFYH. That's all caps, JKFYH. That will ensure that you get not only the free shipping that we have to offer, also an additional 10% off discount. All right, so let's go ahead and get into today's episode and talk about the question, do you have to enjoy exercise in order to stay consistent with it? So when asked this question, and I've been asked this question in the past or some sort of form of this particular question with, it's usually framed with, it's like something that I don't really love to do, but I know that I have to do. I know that it's good for me, something along those lines, because as a coach, primarily the age bracket that I've been working with for the majority of the time that I've coached, the sweet spot has probably been in mid 40s ish, like right around there. I've certainly trained much younger and I've certainly trained much older, like by the swing of a couple of decades. However, I'd say that's generally the range of the folks that I particularly work with. And many times I am working with folks who have kind of fallen two different buckets. They have either been doing resistance and or strength training for quite some time and may have some level of frustration or dissatisfaction with the results that they're getting, where they feel like the effort that they've been putting in, especially for quite a while, has not led to what their expectation would be of the results of that much effort being put in. Or depending on the channel that the client comes to me through, or the funnel that they come to me through, it may be someone who's been fairly active for quite a while in exercising. However, they have not really committed to a specific program that's built to get them stronger and more fit overall. They've primarily done like cardio based classes, group exercise type classes at a gym, where things tend to be more geared towards, say, like doing exercise to the beat of the music. Typically, super high rep ranges are really not much of a focus on rep range. It's really more focused on like choreography versus specific programming based on what we can do to build and or maintain strength and muscle. So knowing that those are really the two buckets, I would say that the folks who come to me primarily with not having done specific training that's been geared towards getting stronger and building more muscle tend to fall in in line with asking that question of, I don't really love this particular style of working out, so I'm hoping that you can find a way to make it fun, find a way to make it enjoyable. And I would tell you that my strong belief is that in order for you to stick with something over the long haul, there has to be some level of enjoyment in order for you to do that. as I think about the various clients that I've worked with, and then also my own journey that I've talked about in previous episodes on this particular podcast, something that I can say with a lot of confidence is that a focus on being able to adjust and adapt based on what will keep both myself and my clients engaged. Again, talking about my own journey and then also the journey of my clients, a focus on ensuring that there's a level of fun slash engagement in there. And I would really use those two things interchangeably, just to simplify things. So ensuring there's a level of fun and engagement tends to lead to better adherence to whatever that program may be. Then that level of adherence being consistent then leads to hopefully getting the results that we're looking for. Of course, it's not always just as simple as that, because we know here that exercise needs to also be paired with good nutrition, which also needs to be paired with proper sleep, which also needs to be paired with proper recovery. So we know that there are different aspects that all come together. There's different columns that all come together to build that house of the lifestyle and the results that we're looking for. Howbeiver, as my grandfather used to say, I'll bring it back in the road here. So I come to this particular question or this conversation around, does exercise have to be enjoyable for you to stay consistent, with an emphatic yes. There are certain aspects of what you're doing from a training standpoint that you do need to enjoy periodically in order for you to be fully committed to that particular process. So some ideas that I've implemented for my clients over a number of years now, and I'll be celebrating next year, we'll be celebrating 10 years in the training space. Some ideas that we've incorporated have been going through different phases of the types of training that we're doing. So we may be doing something that's got more of a strength focus, then we may shift a little bit where we go to more of a hypertrophy and muscle building focus. We may then do some things where we have 3 very specific training days where they're lifting weights on those 3 days. And then they have 2 days, 1 or 2 days, just depending on the individual. I do one-on-one, so individual programming. So it's not the same for everybody. They may have 1 to 2 days where they're what we call flex days, where they hop into a class that they really enjoy at their gym. Or I have some clients who are coaches themselves and they teach group exercise. So it may be a case where they go ahead and they do the group exercise class with their clients. There's a lot of different ways, as I say, a lot of different ways to skin a cat. We also will look at something like adjusting the training split that they're doing. I have one client in particular who's worked with me for quite some time now, and we have gone back and forth between doing an upper body, lower body split, and then I will shift them into a total body split, just so we can make sure that there's some variety that's in there. From my point of view, the key there is ensuring that more often than not, that variety is planned variety, not just going with whatever flavor of the week happens to be on the menu this week. So I want to make that abundantly clear when we talk about trying to keep things engaging and keep things fun by also adding variety in there. I believe that a key to that, especially when it comes to your training, is to basically ensure that you've got the foundational stuff in place. For those of you who've listened to previous episodes, you're going to hear this whole like foundation thing all throughout pretty much anything I ever talk about. You start with a foundation that's in place. So if your foundation is 2 to 3 days of structured strength training, then you have the other days to do whatever floats your boat. If you like to run, cool. Like maybe running is something that you find fun, or like a group exercise boot camp type thing is something that you find fun. So let's implement that into it on those other days, ensuring that we've got our foundation in place with your 2 to 3 days of strength training. So that's just an example. Also, I think about in terms of talking about this topic of whether or not you have to enjoy exercise in order for you to be consistent with it, I think about the number of research studies that have been done in conjunction with also just my own anecdotal experience as a trainer with close to a decade of professional experience. And I say professional experience because prior to that, I was starting to create different things for different people and stuff like that. And I realized like, I want to make sure I'm not like hurting somebody. So why don't I get certified in this thing? So I did that about 10 years ago. So um, as I just lost my point. Yeah. So thinking through different studies and then also, again, my own anecdotal experience, what I have definitely found is if somebody just absolutely hates everything that they're doing in a particular program, and let's talk about like let's just assume say over a 3-month period you've created like a 3-month training plan, or you're going to be working with that person for 3 months and you've just told them like suck it up, I don't care if you don't like anything that's here. This is exactly what science says. This is where like the science bros will come in, like, well, science says that you're supposed to do this, it needs to be this many reps and it needs to be this many sets and it's got to be at this level of intensity and it's this many times per week. More often than not, just with the population that I serve, it just doesn't roll that way. Now don't get it twisted that putting an emphasis on ensuring that something is engaging and that it has pieces of fun in it, don't get it twisted that that means that there is no structure and no foundation and no focus on things that you really don't want to do. The first thing that comes to mind for me is split squats. I think I may have, over the 9 to 10 years, I would say the overwhelming majority of my clients dislike split squats. Like they just really hate them. And it doesn't matter what variety of split squat I may come up with. It just reminded me, especially during like the holiday season here, like Dr. Seuss and Cat in the Hat and whatnot. And it reminds me of like green eggs and ham. And I can't remember the exact line where he's like, I don't like them with a box. I don't like them with rocks. And I may have just made that up. I think about my clients' responses to doing Bulgarian split squats, rear foot elevated split squats, front heel elevated split squats, barbell squats. Like no matter what, just everybody hates a split squat. Like that show, Everybody Hates Chris. Everybody hates split squats, except me. Maybe if you're listening to this and you're somebody who also enjoys split squats, like maybe we can form a little club because I'm not all that bothered by them. I actually pretty much enjoy them, but maybe I'm weird and that's okay. So I think about also just the fact that we you can understand the importance of variety in conjunction with also understanding that there are particular pieces that you're not going to enjoy in your training program. So I think that that's where the ability of a proper coach, or a proper programmer, proper trainer, whichever heading you want to use, I think that that's where the proficiency of that individual to be able to understand how to weave that together really comes into play. I think about it like putting a plate together for somebody. Let's say if you're trying to put a plate together for one of your kids and you're trying to figure out like, okay, I know that a balanced plate would be vegetables. I may be talking about myself here too, like putting a plate together for myself. Like a balanced plate would be something where I've got some sort of like vegetable, some sort of a starchy carb, like sweet potato, jasmine rice, and then some sort of protein, and then just put some sort of fats in there, like might have olive oil or avocado oil or something like that. Like I know that if it was a plate full of nothing but like baked carrots, like probably not my thing, right? However, I do understand that those things have a benefit for me in the long term, both with how I'm going to feel and how I'm going to look, and the energy that the energy and amount of quality fuel that I want for the activities that I'm going to do. However, I don't want my entire plate to be all baked carrots, like miss me with all that. So then, okay, it's like, well, what's the right amount to have in this particular plate that fulfills both what I need and what I really want? So As you can probably tell, I lean very heavily on the side of, yeah, there needs to be some level of enjoyment. Now, a different perspective was shared with me just recently. So, just recently in person, I ran into somebody that I've known for, it's been at least 6 years, I would say, probably close to eight. I'm just guessing. But I ran into somebody who goes to my gym. And I know this individual to be somebody who is wildly consistent with getting in training. I'm not typically there when they go into their gym, but I would say that they, from what I'm aware of, from time to time when I would see them in person inside of a gym, I would say that they are on with regularity training no less than 3 days per week. No less. I would say they fall probably in the 3 to 5 range, most likely, like more often than not. This is an individual who, when I ran into them, I asked them how things were going from a training standpoint, staying moving. And I had already been aware that they were consistent there, but, it's small talk. Sometimes I'm good at it, sometimes I'm not. But I just asked how things were going from a training standpoint, and they said, I hate it. And that took me aback a little bit. So I did the habitual thing that sometimes I also fall into, where I was assuming they were joking. So I was just like, oh, okay, whatever. And they responded with a very serious face. They said, no, I actually hate it. Like I hate working out. And I asked them, so then what keeps you going then? Like I'm a little confused, because what keeps you going if you hate it? And I can tell that you're not joking when you when you say this. Like I waited about, it felt like a minute, but it was probably about 10 seconds, just to see if maybe they were like, I'm just messing with you. And this individual, oh, by the way, probably important for me to mention that they are in their late 70s. So this is an individual that's in their late 70s. And again, I've known them for somewhere in the 5 to 7, 5 to 8 year range. So knowing them throughout those number of years, being acquainted with them and knowing that they've been so consistent with it, I was a little taken aback, because my assumption would be, you've been doing this 3 to 5 days on average a week for a number of years now. And I'm not, I don't quite know what their history was like prior to this, like the 7 decades prior to me getting to know them. Um, and still, it was just like, okay, help me understand. That was a help me understand moment, where I think I said something along the lines of, well, can you help me understand how you remain so consistent? And they said, well, I just know what happens if I don't work out. And when you think about that particular response, for me, so many different things can come to mind when someone who is in their late 70s says to you, well, I know what the opposite is if I don't work out. And we had a very short follow up conversation after that, where I asked them, well, what do you, so you really don't enjoy this? He said, nope. I said, but you still do it because you know of the potential things that could happen if you don't work out. And also, what do you think is different between your awareness and other people's awareness? Because I interact with a lot of different people across a lot of different age ranges on a regular basis throughout my day. So in working inside of the fitness industry, and then also full time inside of the retail industry, inside of an actual building, I interact with a lot of people each day and have observation and interaction and all sorts of things with people across wide ranges. And the the assumption that nobody in there, like, what am I trying to say? Basically, the assumption that just people knowing what could happen if they don't exercise consistently is enough for them to exercise consistently is, from my point of view, a very, like, a super false assumption. I more often than not come across people who know the importance of having exercise be part of their routine and still make the decision to do something else. And I specify they make the decision to do something else because I want to make it clear that just choosing to not exercise is not just a single decision to choose to not exercise. You're still doing something. Like, it's not like, okay, um, since I'm not exercising, I'm not doing anything. You're doing something, unless you are sitting, like literally just like sitting in a room, like doing nothing. But even that's a decision. I decided to, instead of going to train, or instead of going to go for a walk, or lift weights, I decided to sit on the couch and stare at the wall. Well, cool. You still made a decision to do something else. So that's that's a whole different rant. Um, so in coming across people who have been faced with that information before, whether they themselves have had gone through a particular episode, or an issue, or whether they know someone who means something to them, who have gone through something, there are still, unfortunately, and I'm serious when I say unfortunately, because I do believe that it's unfortunate, that there are folks who still will make the decision not to do something different and try to change that possible outcome, or the probability, I should say, of that possible outcome with not exercising. So, what I thought was interesting in just like this few minutes of conversation with this particular individual, and just kind of asking them a little bit more, because again, it really surprised me, just because I know them to be so consistent with it. It was very matter of fact. They said, I don't really enjoy working out. Doesn't really matter, what the workout is. I don't really enjoy it. Said the best part of it is, I'm when I'm done. Like, I enjoy being done. I enjoy the fact that it's over. And I was thinking, okay, so what you're saying is, you love that feeling, like the endorphins. And they were like, no, man, I'm telling you, I just like get it. I just want it to be over with. And it was in that moment, then, with that response, that I realized that I was subconsciously like fighting for, them to give me the response that I was looking for, which is the exact opposite of what I preach. So, welcome to, me being just like a lot of people, where occasionally, without like proper supervision, I just kind of fall into the same thing, where I was just like, well, no, come on, you can't really. No, he said all along during the entire conversation, it's like, I'm not joking with you. I just really don't enjoy it. Now, what I will say, and this will be an action item, a couple of tips that I would have for someone who is in this particular position, like this individual, where you are consistent with it and you're going to keep going, even though you don't enjoy it. And these tips are coming straight from them, because I asked, well, then how do you stick with it, other than just knowing what the possible risks could be if you don't. So two tips that I will have for you, and these are coming from basically my review and summary of my conversation with this individual. And really, in hindsight, it would have been cool to ask them if they wanted to come on to the pod just for a short conversation to talk about it. If I run into them again, maybe I'll see if I can get them on. So a couple of things that I would share as action items based on this conversation, that was somewhat of a perspective shift for me, is I is are two things that I identified that I know that they do, that keep them showing up. So one is the stated reason that they gave, where they understand what could happen if they don't show up. Being someone who's in their late 70s and likely having some experience with others around them. We actually talked about that for a moment, like experience with others around them who are not active, who do not exercise, who do not lift weights, and understanding what the potential risks are of that. So, step number, or um, yes, action item one would be aware of what some of the risks are with not exercising regularly. I would say number two, and these are no level of importance, uh, do that activity with people that you at least enjoy being around. So that's something that I am aware of, that this particular individual, they are consistent, and they're typically around people that they enjoy being around. And from what they've reported back, these are individuals, and I know some of these individuals too, that you would likely want to be around, whether it was around exercise or some other thing, like you were in a book club together, or you enjoyed some other type of sport or some sort of activity, these are individuals who you would want to be around. So, uh, one action item number one would be, you know, stay aware of the benefits slash potential risks of not exercising. Two, get yourself around people, like incorporate people who you actually enjoy being around personality wise. Because if you don't typically enjoy exercise, then like they probably don't enjoy exercise. They may not enjoy exercise too. Like it doesn't necessarily need to be people that enjoy exercise. It ideally should be people that you would want to be around anyway. So it's not necessarily about the activity, it's about the people. And then that brings me to my final point is find somewhere that has a consistent schedule that you can count on and that you know is going to hold you accountable for not showing up to that thing. So group exercise in this particular case can be a really good option, especially when it's properly programmed. And I know that with this particular individual, the program that they do follow is properly programmed and includes a good mix of both weight based or weight bearing movement. So resistance training, so strength, muscle, and cardio. So it's a program that encompasses all those things. So I know they're good to go there. And then also they sign up for, going to that particular class. They know that if they're not there a couple of days, somebody's going to reach out from that particular gym and say, hey, have noticed you haven't seen you there in a while. What's going on? Like that sort of a thing. So have some sort of accountability that's in place where you've got to show up to that particular training space. So those are three tips I have for you, straight from a conversation that I had recently with someone who doesn't enjoy exercise. So three ways that you can try to stay consistent with something even when you don't enjoy it, that being specific to exercise. So with that, I'm going to ask you for a favor. If you could, based on whatever platform you are listening to this on or watching this on, if I could, again, if I do this correctly, get this uploaded to YouTube, leave a rating and or review. I would really appreciate that. So if you're on Apple Podcasts, then leave a rating and a review. If you're on Spotify, you can leave a rating and then also a comment. And then if you are on YouTube, you can leave a like. So I would appreciate that. So with that, we are going to call it an episode. So thank you for tuning into episode 172 of Help Me Understand. Take care, and I'll talk to you next time.